Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today we're here with my good friend Neil. Always excited to catch up with old friends. And we're going to be talking about, he very much has created a lifestyle business as a real estate investor, has done well, kind of left corporate America behind and all of those things. But we're going to be talking about kind of how to build your business so that it allows you to live the life that you kind of got into the business for in the first place. So Neil, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me. Good catching up.
Yeah, good to see you. So, one of the reasons I've mentioned this before, one of the reasons I do the podcast is it gives me a chance to kind of catch up with old friends and make new ones too. But, we haven't talked in a little while here, but fortunate to have a ton of kind of old friends out there that I love to use the podcast to catch up with, including you, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, I want to jump into, I know you've attempted to kind of scale the heck out of your business. You've tried some other things. We'll talk about that a little bit today. But before we kind of jump into that, just tell us about you, your background, how you got started in real estate a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in real estate since like 2009, but started as a realtor in 2005. So I'm in Northwest Indiana, right near Notre Dame. And I always loved real estate. I'd grab the Homes and Lifestyles magazines when I'd walk through the grocery store and just look at them. And then in 2005, I was like, I'm going to get my real estate license. Well, I still had a corporate job at Coca-Cola and ended up holding that job until early 2017. So I would, starting in like 2009, I'd flip a home, but still have the corporate job, right? And it got to the point in like 2016 where I was doing like 7 or 8 houses, flipping them at a time, and then still managing 2 shifts of people. So I left early 2017. I don't know how I did it, but I went full time in 2017, and then I think in 2019 I found you guys and started direct mail marketing and kind of got associated with Investor Fuel and hung out with the guys in there and met a lot of friends and made a lot of friends and went direct to seller on the marketing side.
Yeah. There's a lot of lessons you learn. Like if you still have your job, or I think, once you jump into it full time, if for those that are listening that are not full time, and once you get around a bunch of people that are doing things differently than the way you've done them, it's a little bit of baptism by fire, right? You just start to see what's possible, opens your mind to things that you didn't, sometimes it's not even like rocket science. You're like, it's a little epiphany. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, why, I don't know why I haven't ever done that. Or I used to do that. Why did we stop doing that? And it just kind of forces you, it starts to force some accountability to do things differently that are working for other people that you think could work for you, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I had a partner who he was the money guy and I did everything else. So I learned a lot by fire. But he even said, he had limiting beliefs too initially. And he said, oh, you can't really make a living off of doing 2 or 3 houses a year. So, I had that mentality from the beginning of like, hey, I'm doing this full-time job and the rest is just, hustle side income. So getting around people that, you're like, aha, that's possible. All right. If one person can do it, I can do it too. And then you start implementing things and moving the needle a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'll say about Investor Fuel in our group is there's a lot of amazing people in there, but there's nobody that's like superhuman, right? So you kind of have this feel of like, if that person can do it, I can do this too. There's nobody that's like, I could never do that because they're special. They're all equally, I guess we're all equally special or unspecial, whatever you want to say there. But it's not like rocket science. It's just a proven formula or a roadmap that somebody else has followed that generally in our group, they share with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I know you're typically doing kind of 4 to 6 deals a month or so. And so let's talk a little bit about, I know you've tried to scale it up. You're very much a lifestyle guy, have a young family and all that, which is great. It's funny because I've done a lot of volume in years before, and there are times where people would say like, I just didn't really like it was too much for me, too much work or working too hard. And we all kind of got into this business to live a better lifestyle. And sometimes, you know, you're just you're just not happy with where you're at. And of course, social media and things like that might put you on a pedestal because of like, oh, you're doing all the, you're crushing it, but in your personal life, you don't feel like you are, right? And so, I think we've all tested those boundaries a little bit, and so let's talk about like your attempts to kind of scale, and then just kind of how you built your team out so that it allows you to live the life you want, still live a very good life, have the financial freedoms and all that without having to be like have a massive machine that keeps pulling you back in.
Yeah, well, I will say I don't have it figured out, so I appreciate
Well,
the
it's a
introduction on
journey,
that.
right?
Yeah, it's a journey for sure. So I've had some hardships over the past year. We had some health challenges with my son, and recently lost my mom, and I keep thinking to myself that like, time's gonna run out on everyone, right? So we all think about like when I get here, I will do this, right? So I'm really trying to optimize for time with my family and what I feel is really important to me right now in this season of life, right? So um, I've structured a team around that's better at things than I am, and that was through trial and error also, right? So I think the biggest hire, I'll just kind of iron out my team real quick. So I have a salesperson who's been with me 5 years. I have a follow-up specialist that I think we're going on 2.5 or 3, and then I recently hired a rock star assistant, replacing my other assistant, that I have probably some stories about that I could tell you that I didn't even know was happening, right? So um, they help me so much that I would not be able to do what I do without it, right? They give me the time to kind of go out and try new things and see if it's worth bringing them back into the business. Um, and I couldn't do it without him, And so, from a structure standpoint, that's how it looks. And I probably am working 20 hours a week right now. We do have this big, large remodel on the river that is dragging me into some design and project management, like I don't want to have happen, right? Um, but we kind of manage this through a Monday meeting. We have one-on-ones Monday, and then a 1 hour meeting on Mondays, and then we're pretty engaged. Every time we get something in contract, we do a deal review, and that sort of thing. So, and my assistant and I do talk often via email, but she's the best.
Yeah. Let's talk about because I think of this almost this spectrum, and sometimes I reference the like Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, where you go from employee to self-employed, which means you have a business, but the business owns you, like you're doing all the work, to you're a business owner in the upper right quadrant, to your money is working for you and you don't have to do anything. And I think we all, not all of us, I mean, I personally, I have things going on in probably all those boxes.
Yeah.
More passive investments like multifamily that is kind of that cash the lower right cash flow quadrant. I have businesses that I'm always kind of starting something, and so I'm like self-employed. I'm doing everything, and then I have businesses where I have a team, right? And I think a lot of us, you can't jump into any of those boxes overnight unless you inherit a bunch of money and you kind of go right to the passive investing. But most people that start a house flipping business get stuck in that self-employed box. And I know you were there, I was there, we were all there at one point. And then inside of that, once you make it to the business owner box, if you will, there's a spectrum, right? It's like you could have a huge team and you're really closer to the end of like not being involved, or you have a small team but you keep getting pulled back in. It feels to me like from our conversations, you're kind of like, halfway or three-quarters of the way through that, where your business is right sized, where it can run largely without you, but you have some touch points. Every once in a while, you get pulled in if there's a problem, and I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs are okay with that. I mean, we don't really want to be completely out because we like solving problems, we like
Yeah.
being involved in the business, but we don't like to like have to do everything. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I want to feel useful, right? At,
Yeah,
at least feel useful within the business, right? Because if your team
right.
bother you for anything, then it's like, okay, now I got to go start something else, like you mentioned before, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're absolutely right there. Yeah.
And everybody I've known that finds a way to kind of be out of the business, pulled out, they just go starting other stuff or get shiny object and start to get into other things. I know you've done some of that as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I ended up remodeling an assisted living facility. I did an assisted living to memory care conversion as the contractor. That was, I don't know how I don't know how, you look back and you just don't know how you get talked into this stuff, but it's like new and you're learning,
Yeah.
and that's how you get sucked in. Um,
Yeah.
but on the scaling side, the past couple of years have been pretty similar for me, right? We've tried more marketing, we've tried less marketing, we've tried wholesaling, we've tried not wholesaling. And I think the common theme here has been, when we get to a certain point, we either have to add a bunch of infrastructure or make a change within the business that quite frankly hasn't worked out for us. When we ramp marketing, our cost per deal goes up too high, or when our overhead is just way high, we feel like we have to purchase things, and then we look back on the year, we had like 15% of our purchases like didn't really make the minimum of what we like to make,
Yeah.
on a property just to pay the bills. So you feel like you're always in action trying to feed the machine at the beginning of the month.
Yeah. Yeah. There is this issue of, especially if your team doesn't change, they all have these pre-existing beliefs of like, if it's especially if it's salespeople, like if they're too comfortable, then growth kind of gets hard. And so then if you bring in, you might just have to add, and yeah, I know you've tried this, but bring in a second salesperson,
Yeah.
double your advertising, bring in more administrative help. But sometimes in the journey of like scaling up, you start to convince yourself why you could pay less for deals and you start to focus on units and then they're not as profitable. And so maybe you grow by 30 or 50% unit wise, but not necessarily profit wise.
Yeah, top line and bottom line are a lot different numbers to talk about, right? So
Yeah.
there was a year where we did 30% more top line, but the bottom line was very similar, not worth the effort, really. So
Right.
we kind of learned that through the pain of it. And there's months where when we're rolling, we do experiment like some R&D and bump what we think is a unit on marketing, right? But we found that 4 to 6 deal range, like it honestly keeps us most profitable that we found.
Hmm. Yeah. So share some thoughts here or what you've done to so everybody is a little bit different. Nobody should go take your blueprint exactly, right? But because it
Yeah.
kind of takes your skill set, what are you good at, and you build your team around that. So, for example, there's some people that are friends of ours that we know that I've told like they really, they maybe their businesses struggled a little bit, and I'm like, you're really good at acquisitions until your team is stable. You just need to do all the acquisitions. Like
Yeah.
stop trying to outsource that because you're good at it and nobody's ever going to be as good as you, at least in your eyes. And you keep struggling with finding the right person and, basically telling them like, oh, I'll just go do this one because you're a better closer. So stop like pussyfooting around. Just do it. Just do that
Yeah.
thing and then build a team around you so that you don't have to do as much administrative stuff because nobody nobody really wants to do that.
Yeah, so I'd say it's maybe not a positive, but I stayed in like every seat for too long,
Yeah.
So I unfortunately or fortunately do know a lot about maybe every position within the company, right? So I can jump in when needed and I can coach on that. And I think probably my best skill set from a team standpoint is I'm pretty good at putting a team together. Um, and and I don't know how it's happened, but even when I look back, like early on whether it was hiring a merchandiser or hiring a salesperson, or I feel like I've just been a pretty good gauge of people. And I don't know if that's replicatable. But I think that's probably been my strong suit, is like finding good humans, good people in general, that the skill set's easier to teach than people being a good human.
Yeah, if you find a good athlete, you can kind of teach them how to do the job.
Yeah.
Yeah. What, and you don't know where that comes from? I mean, was it some of that from your kind of corporate America days?
Yeah, I mean I've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews, and you get to the point where you kind of know right away, right?
Yeah.
And so I think just repetitions kind of got me to where, but I handpicked my sales guy. I mean, we were in the corporate world together, and I said, hey man, if this ever doesn't, he was a director level guy, and I said, hey man, if this starts working, like I'm gonna come and try to recruit you, right? And that was a long time ago. And we do life together. I mean, it's rare that you could, not talk about work with your salesperson, but it works for us. And maybe it won't work forever, but I'm really happy to do life with the people that work, that work with us.
Yeah, that's great. So, can you share? I know it's easy to get pulled in direction of shiny objects as
Yeah.
well, and I think you told me before we started hit recording here that you've got your team dialed into where you're probably working about 20 hours a week, right? And so, how do you balance uh, going after shiny objects because you've got the time to do it
Hmm.
and living the life? I mean, we kind of talked about you being a lifestyle investor, living the life that you got into the business for in the first place. Because I've kind of found that even a lot of real estate investors that want to have the business fuel their life, it's easy to get bored and not want to solve a business problem or pursue a new business or something. And I know you've tried it both ways, and I'm always trying new stuff too. But just share like that how you've kind of managed that balance um, in your business.
Yeah, so I pick verticals within the business, right? So at least it's not a brand new learning curve,
Yeah.
and so I like to exercise in the morning. I like to do that. That's what I like to do outside of working. So I make sure that's done, and then with the time that I have, like I've recently got into to doing notes like seller finance. And then as well as like doing some local hard money for investors, right? And I feel like a lot like you, like I just like talking to people, and I feel like in flipping homes, it's a little bit more of a transactional business where you talk to one person one time, you help them, and then you maybe never get an opportunity to talk or to help them again, right? Whereas if I'm helping somebody with a loan on a property, then it's most often reoccurring stuff, right? So I think that that's a cool change for me. And then I really like seeing our active money get turned into a cash on cash, right? So I'm just learning money in a sense where we've all got debt equity in rentals if you started early enough that if you made a calculation on, you would say, why am I even holding this thing, right? So I'm looking at doing some redistributions of stuff, and there's always something to do. It's just at what level do you want to do it in? But I don't do any evening events. I know there's like some RIA groups and some meetups and stuff, and this young season, I got a 10-month-old and a 5-year-old that I just have a hard stop at 5:30, and it just is what it is. And I know I'm missing business, and I know I could run up the scoreboard, but it's just not that important to me.
Not what you want to do.
Yeah.
I found, and it's been easy over the past few years. I think with between COVID and the interest rate change that caused a downturn in the market and stuff, for people to jump into totally different businesses or go into something totally different that's a shiny object. But I found the people that jump into other things that are tangent to their business, whether it's lending or coaching or some service company that supports that serves the real estate investing industry, it's not as big of a jump. I mean, usually you're solving a problem that you had in your business that clearly other people have as well. And so it's not as big of a jump as like, hey, I'm going to become a crypto day trader and I don't know anything about it, but I know a lot of people are doing it right now, right? So,
Exactly. I
um,
mean, there's overlap. Yep. Yep.
yep, yep. So, I know you've also tested a little bit going into other markets, like nearby markets, right? I mean, maybe share your experience on how that works. And I know I just had a guy that's in our group on the show here recently, and he's like laser focused. He operates in San Antonio. He's laser focused not on San Antonio, like literally like one neighborhood of
Oh,
San
wow.
Antonio, and honestly, I don't know anybody that's that laser focused. He's like, there's 500 houses in this area. He owns 200 of them now, and he's like just gonna buy them all. And it's super. I mean, it's super focused. But it's funny because a lot of us, even in I kind of gave the comment during that show of even in a market like where I'm at, DFW is basically like 8 million people now, and there's a lot of investors here that think they're if they go out in some offline market like outside of town that the grass is greener over there, right? So we have this tendency to think the grass is greener somewhere. But I know you've tested that, and what's been your experience?
Yeah, we have. So early 2024, we switched to like, shiny object, virtual wholesaling, And so
Yeah,
we were like, all right, well, 2 hours within our coverage area, right? And we just couldn't get the repairs correct, right? And so every time we've tried to push outside of where we're comfortable at, we get rural towns that have 600 people in them and they sell 4 houses a year in the whole town, right? Or just
yeah,
areas where we don't know the buyers, or none of our rehab team wants to drive out there. And so it's just a lot. Especially for a guy that I don't particularly right now. I mean, I'm sure when my kids grow up, I'll want to stomp the pedal back down, right? But it's a lot of effort right now for my specific season of life.
yeah, yeah.
So,
No, and the grass is not green. Like sometimes, typically, what happens is in the rural areas, it's way easier to buy. Real estate investors get super excited. They probably overpay a little bit for that market because if you're in your main market, it's like, hey, you're lucky to get something at 70% of ARV, less repairs, and you go out there and you're like, I bought it for 50% of ARV, but it wasn't deep enough because the dispo side is way harder, right?
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And we started wholesaling, and then we had to, just because the cost per acquisition got too high for our spreads, we had to go back to our initial model, which is crazy because we see other people being really successful at it, and that's amazing. And it's just crazy how some stuff just doesn't work for some people, and that's okay. But oftentimes when you change, like you've been working on this business for 15 years of your life, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to change stuff. Well, you've been changing stuff that have worked for a long time. And then
Yeah.
you decide, well, I'm going all in and going to change all this. And you're like, well, where you were is better than where you're at now. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting how that happens over a long period of time.
Yeah. There's no doubt. I think if you think of this analogy of a cat, like we've had cats before. I'm not really a cat person, but like a cat and like a ball, and they're like just laying there and they're bored, and they just got to start batting that like ball around. Like they're like, hey, I'm gonna entertain myself here by mixing it up a little bit. And so I think as real estate investors, we sometimes break stuff that isn't broken or go try to fix stuff that isn't broken just because we're bored.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
guilty. I'm guilty. I
yeah,
could
me
talk
too.
all day on
That's why I
just
said it.
that. Yeah.
So what kind of struggles are you dealing with these days? That like what's your focus on these days? What are the things you're trying to repair?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, I mean, things are taking a little bit longer to sell, probably like everywhere else, right? So combating that a little bit on the buyer's inspection responses are getting a little dicey out there for us. They happen to want a lot more right now. Um, and then we are more conservative in what we're offering, right? But there is a point where if you're too conservative, you're not going to win deals. So there is a number that you always have to play with and internally that makes sense. So we're always readjusting that currently.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Well, Neil, appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, if folks want to connect with you or learn any more about what you've got going on, where can they go?
Yeah, easiest way is Neil Clue on Instagram. Messages is just great, and yeah, I'm on Facebook too. Neil
Okay.
Kluszczynski.
We'll add some links down below for
Yeah,
everybody. So, always great to see you, buddy.
yeah, you too. You too. Thanks
Yeah,
for having
yeah,
me on.
awesome. Of course, yeah. Everybody, hope you got some good insights from today. I think one of the lessons here is a lot of us get into it and we'd be excited to have a great lifestyle business that allows us to do all the things we want in life, and then we feel some pressures, whether it's social media or our own internal demons that are saying you need to double, right? And so there's nothing wrong with those things as long as it doesn't take over your life and force you to, sometimes you're successful in business, but other parts of your life are falling apart. So a lot of lessons to be learned from those that have figured out how to build a business that supports the exact life that they would have loved to have when they first got into the business. And every once in a while, you need to do a little kind of spring cleaning in your life and ask yourself the questions if, what would you be happy with? It's not, bigger is not necessarily better, basically. So hope you guys got some good value from today. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.